Hey guys, tonight we're going to dim the lights and drift back in time to an era that, despite its grandeur, held a chilling secret for many the miserable existence of a political hostage in a royal court. Imagine being a child, or a young adult, from a powerful family, sent to live in a magnificent palace surrounded by luxury, but knowing deep down you're not a guest. You're a pawn. You're a human bargaining chip, held not by chains but by the subtle, suffocating power of diplomacy and veiled threats. It's a gilded cage, and you, my friend, are the bird. Seriously, you wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes before wishing you could simply teleport back to your cozy bed. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere quiet, maybe a small cabin in the Redwood Forest or a bustling apartment in downtown Chicago, go ahead and drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you all are listening from. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine, if you will, that you are a young noble from a powerful, perhaps even rival kingdom. Your family holds significant sway, perhaps controlling vast territories reminiscent of the sprawling plains of Montana or the fertile farmlands of Iowa, or commanding a formidable army like the well-drilled forces of a modern-day National Guard unit. For generations, your lineage has navigated the treacherous waters of power, sometimes allied with, sometimes in conflict with, the grander, more dominant kingdom. Now, as part of a peace treaty, a truce, or a complex diplomatic arrangement, or perhaps a younger sibling, have been sent to the enemies, or rather the host kingdom's royal court. Your official title might be guest, student, or even ambassador. You wear fine silks and velvets, dine on exquisite banquets, and are housed in lavish chambers, perhaps even within the opulent halls of a palace reminiscent of a European monarch's residence, transplanted into the heart of a grand American city, like a fantastical Versailles rising from the landscape of Washington, D.C. Yet every gilded ornament, every silken curtain, every elaborate feast whispers the chilling truth you are a political hostage. You live in a golden cage palace walls, prison bars, a life of deceptive luxury that masks a terrifying, inescapable captivity. It's like being offered a 5-star hotel suite, but every door is locked from the outside, and the bellhop reports directly to someone who might want you dead. And you just know that even the softest pillow holds a hidden threat. A common historical truth is that the practice of exchanging royal or noble hostages was a widespread and long-standing diplomatic tool throughout much of history, particularly in medieval and early modern Europe and Asia. These hostages, often children or young adults, were sent to the court of a rival or dominant power to guarantee treaties, ensure loyalty, or prevent rebellion. While typically treated with outward respect and even luxury, their true status was that of a human bond. Their continued well-being, and indeed, their very lives depended entirely on the good behavior of their home kingdom. They served as constant, living reminders of a political agreement, a tangible insurance policy for the powerful. You're not just a visitor, you're collateral, a valuable piece of property in a grand, dangerous game of thrones as you first arrive at the majestic palace. The sheer scale and splendor are overwhelming. Imagine the towering walls, perhaps as formidable as the ancient forts of New Mexico, or the vast manicured gardens stretching out like the meticulously planned estates of old southern plantations. The initial welcome might be warm, even effusive. Courtiers smile, servants bow, and the reigning monarch offers gracious words. You are given sumptuous clothing, far grander than anything you wore at home. Your chambers are not mere rooms, but elaborate suites, perhaps with gilded furniture, tapestries depicting heroic battles, and windows offering panoramic views of the capital city, sprawling like a historical Boston or Philadelphia. You have attendants, tutors, perhaps even companions your own age, seemingly enjoying a life of unparalleled privilege. It's an intoxicating facade designed to both impress and subtly disarm you, to make you forget, for a fleeting moment, your true predicament. But then, the subtle hints begin to accumulate, chipping away at the illusion. You notice that while you have attendants, they are never truly your people. They are loyal to the court. Their smiles perhaps a little too eager, their eyes a little too observant. They report your movements, your conversations, even your moods. You are free to roam the palace, but only within certain boundaries, never unaccompanied. You might request to visit a particular city landmark, perhaps a bustling market or grand temple, only to be politely, but firmly denied, with vague explanations about your safety or the protocol for honored guests. It's like being given the keys to a mansion, only to find invisible electric fences everywhere, monitored by cameras you can't see. You're told you're free, but your every step is controlled, and you just know that freedom is an illusion. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail about the luxury of political hostages is that their opulent lifestyle often served a dual purpose to project the host kingdom's wealth and power, thereby intimidating the hostage's home country, and to subtly assimilate the hostage into the host culture, potentially weakening their loyalty to their original family and strengthening their ties to the court that now controlled their fate. They were given comfort, but it was comfort designed to exert influence. This means every fine meal, every silken gown, was a subtle form of psychological warfare, slowly attempting to reshape your very identity. Historians still widely debate the extent to which individual political hostages genuinely formed loyalties to their host courts, versus maintaining secret allegiances to their home kingdoms, and whether instances of successful assimilation were truly conversions of heart, or merely pragmatic adaptations to an impossible situation, suggesting a complex psychological tightrope walk for these young nobles. For you, as you gaze out from your gilded window, the vastness of the host kingdom seems to stretch endlessly, reminding you of the immense distance, both literal and metaphorical, from your own people. Consider the job of a modern-day foreign exchange student in a prestigious university in Cambridge. Massachusetts, who lives in a comfortable dorm, attends classes, explores the city, and freely communicates with their family back home, all with the explicit understanding that they are there for education and cultural exchange. Their experience is about personal growth and freedom. Now, imagine your ancient counterpart, a political hostage, whose university is a royal court, whose education is often about learning the customs and language of your captors, and whose communication with home is heavily censored, if it exists at all. His personal growth is often about survival, and his freedom is a cruel joke. It's like comparing a welcoming academic institution to a beautifully decorated, but very real, prison. You know you're learning, but the cost is immeasurable. And you just know that phone calls home are definitely not on the menu. The palace walls, while seemingly offering protection, were in fact your prison bars. Beyond the initial welcome, the court subtly but effectively limits your interactions. You might be allowed to receive letters from home, but they are invariably read by the court's scribes or spy masters. Your own outgoing letters would face similar scrutiny. Any coded messages, any hint of rebellion or dissatisfaction, would be swiftly noted and could have dire consequences for you or your family. This constant surveillance means that every word you utter, every expression on your face, is potentially being observed, analyzed, and recorded. It's like living in a reality TV show, but the cameras are hidden, and the producers can decide your fate on a whim. You yearn for a private thought, a moment of unguarded emotion, but it's a luxury you cannot afford. Your attendants and companions, while seemingly friendly, are extensions of the royal authority. The young nobles assigned to be your friends might be genuinely pleasant, but their primary loyalty is to their own monarch. They are likely instructed to monitor you, to report on your moods, your conversations, and any signs of disloyalty. You can never truly relax, never fully trust anyone, constantly weighing your words and actions, Every friendly gesture, every casual question carries a hidden undertone, a potential trap. It's like being surrounded by undercover agents, all wearing polite smiles, waiting for you to slip up. You learn to smile back, to offer pleasantries, but your heart remains a fortress, locked against true connection. The luxurious confinement is perhaps the cruelest aspect. You are not physically tormented, not starved or beaten. Instead, you are given every comfort, every indulgence, but always within the confines of your golden cage. You eat the finest foods, wear the most beautiful clothes, receive the best education, but none of it truly belongs to you, and none of it can buy your freedom. It's a constant, agonizing reminder that your life, however outwardly splendid, is utterly controlled by another. It's like being offered a feast, but every bite reminds you that you're eating at the pleasure of your captor, and they can withdraw it at any moment. You crave simple, unadorned freedom, but it's constantly masked by opulent chains. So, as you walk the grand halls of the royal palace, the silken robes brushing against your skin, and the distant sound of courtly music echoing through the vast chambers, you feel the profound truth of a golden cage palace walls. Prison bars. Your life of deceptive luxury is a constant reminder of your profound captivity. Your every comfort merely a gilded chain binding you to the will of another. In a royal court, the very act of existing as a political hostage truly sucked. You've stepped into the dazzling yet disquieting world of the royal court, feeling the subtle binds of your golden cage where luxury masks your captivity. Now, as you attempt to navigate the intricate social landscape of your host kingdom, you quickly learn that the smiles are rarely genuine, and danger lurks beneath every polite conversation. The smiling viper trusts treacherous dance. This isn't about open conflict. It's about the constant paranoia, the veiled threats, and the hidden agendas of courtiers and rivals, where every interaction is a calculated risk, and a misstep could lead to ruin. It's like being forced to attend a never-ending masquerade ball, where everyone is wearing a charming mask, but you know a venomous fang might be hidden behind any one of them. And you just know that every whispered compliment could be a veiled insult. A common historical truth is that royal courts throughout history were often hotbeds of intrigue, factionalism, and espionage, where courtiers constantly vied for the monarch's favor, power, and wealth. For a political hostage, this environment was particularly perilous. Every smile and every invitation, every seemingly casual conversation could be a test of loyalty, an attempt to extract information, or a subtle trap. Trust was a rare commodity, and suspicion a necessary survival tool, as whispers and rumors could quickly become accusations with dire consequences. You're not just living in a palace, you're living in a viper's nest, and you're the most vulnerable target. As you spend more time within the gilded halls, the initial awe gives way to a simmering unease. You observe the courtiers, the noble families, and the various factions vying for the monarch's attention. Their lives revolve around proximity to power, and that often means subtly undermining rivals. You, as a political hostage, are a unique figure, simultaneously a guest, a potential threat, and a valuable asset. This makes you a target for manipulation from all sides. You might find yourself approached by seemingly friendly nobles, perhaps inviting you to a private hunt, or sharing a goblet of wine in a quiet corner of the sprawling palace gardens, which might be as meticulously sculpted as the formal gardens of an old estate in Virginia. Their questions seem innocent enough. How fare your family? What news from your homeland? Do you find our court superior in its customs? But their eyes linger, watching your reactions, seeking any flicker of discontent or any unwitting revelation. It's like being constantly interviewed for a job you don't want, where every answer could lead to your dismissal, or worse, your demise. You desperately want to be open, but every instinct screams caution. And you just know that seemingly casual question is anything but. The treacherous dance of trust begins almost immediately. You learn to weigh every word you speak, every gesture you make. Overenthusiasm could be seen as disloyalty to your home, while too much reserve could be interpreted as arrogance or defiance. You must appear agreeable, even grateful for your guest status, but never so much that you seem to forget your roots. It's a delicate, exhausting balancing act, constantly calibrating your public persona to survive. Imagine trying to walk a tightrope across a chasm, while everyone below throws pebbles to try and make you fall. You are always performing, always on edge. A fascinating yet rarely discussed detail about hostage diplomacy is that hostage takers often encouraged marriage alliances between the hostage and a member of their own nobility, or even the royal family itself. While seemingly a path to integration and comfort, such marriages often serve to further bind the hostage to the host kingdom, potentially creating divided loyalties and ensuring offspring who would have a vested interest in maintaining the peace, effectively turning the hostage into a permanent, highly influential but still controlled member of the opposing court. This means a seemingly happy union could be yet another, more subtle, form of the golden cage, making escape from your predicament even more psychologically complex. Historians still widely debate the extent to which political hostages were truly integrated into their host societies and genuinely adopted new allegiances, versus maintaining deep-seated loyalty to their original homelands, and whether the psychological pressure of this forced assimilation led to genuine emotional conflict or merely a pragmatic outward show of conformity, suggesting a profound internal struggle for these individuals. For you, the young noble, every kind gesture from your hosts felt like a test. Every moment of supposed leisure a new opportunity for surveillance. Consider the job of a modern-day diplomat in a foreign embassy in Washington, D.C., whose role involves carefully negotiating treaties, representing their country's interests, and building relationships based on mutual respect and open communication, all while operating under the protection of international law. Their work relies on trust and formal protocols. Now, imagine your ancient counterpart, a political hostage whose diplomacy involves simply existing, whose negotiations are conducted through their very presence, and whose relationships are often built on suspicion and fear, with no real legal protections beyond the whim of the monarch. His communication is often a one-way flow of information from him, and his negotiation is simply his continued breathing. It's like comparing a professional chess player to a pawn being moved by unseen hands. You know you're part of a grand strategy, but you have no agency, and you just know your negotiating power is zero. The viperous nature of the court means that your most dangerous enemies are often those who smile the brightest. Courtiers might offer you seemingly helpful advice that subtly undermines your standing, or reveal information about your home country that they know will displease the monarch. They might plant rumors about your intentions, or exaggerate a minor slip-up, because their own positions are precarious. They might seek to elevate themselves by bringing you down, or by proving their unwavering loyalty to the monarch by demonstrating your perceived weaknesses. It's like being in a popularity contest where everyone secretly hates you, and they're all trying to rig the vote. You yearn for genuine connection, but it's too risky. You also face the constant threat of being used as a political tool. The monarch might parade you before visiting dignitaries from your homeland, a living symbol of their dominance. They might subtly alter your living conditions, or change the level of your access, sending a silent message to your family about their current standing. Your presence, your very existence, is a constant pressure point, a leverage in the ongoing diplomatic dance between your two kingdoms. You are a pawn, moved across the chessboard of international relations, with no say in your own deployment. It's like being a valuable prop in a play you didn't audition for, and the director can decide to smash you at any moment. You have no agency, only utility. The psychological toll of this constant paranoia is immense. You can never truly relax, never truly be yourself. Every conversation is analyzed, every gesture weighed. You develop a habit of self-censorship, of suppressing your true thoughts and feelings, knowing that any expression of discontent could be catastrophic. This leads to a profound sense of isolation, even amidst the glittering crowds of the court. You are surrounded by people, yet utterly alone, trapped within your own guarded mind. It's like living with a permanent headache, always aware of the dull throb of anxiety just beneath the surface. You crave genuine connection, but it's a luxury you can't afford. So, as you gracefully navigate the opulent halls, exchanging polite smiles and empty pleasantries with courtiers whose true intentions remain shrouded, you feel the profound truth of the smiling viper trust's treacherous dance. Your life is a constant performance, every interaction a potential trap, where survival means mastering the art of dissimulation. In a royal court, the very act of trying to trust anyone truly sucked. You've begun to understand the psychological tightrope walk of life as a political hostage, where every smile hides a potential threat and trust is a dangerous illusion. Now, as you try to carve out a semblance of a routine within the glittering, yet oppressive palace, you realize that your privacy is non-existent, and every casual remark could be your undoing whispers in walls, every secret a weapon. This isn't about dramatic espionage. It's about the pervasive, relentless surveillance, the network of informants, and the chilling reality that every private thought, every unguarded conversation, could be twisted, misreported, and used against you or your family, turning your deepest secrets into instruments of your captors. It's like living in a house made of glass, where everyone is constantly looking in, and they have microphones hidden in the potted plants. And you just know that even your dreams might be recorded. A common historical truth is that royal courts were centers of intense information gathering, both formal and informal. Monarchs and their advisors relied heavily on networks of spies, informers, and loyal servants to monitor foreign guests, especially hostages, rival courtiers, and even their own family members. This pervasive surveillance aimed to uncover conspiracies, gauge loyalty, and gather intelligence that could be used for political leverage. For a hostage, this meant an almost complete lack of privacy, and the constant fear that any perceived misstep or disloyal comment could lead to severe repercussions, making self-censorship a vital survival mechanism. You're not just in a palace. You're in a meticulously crafted web of watchful eyes and listening ears, where information is power, and your life is a constant open book. From the moment you arrived, you probably noticed the sheer number of people constantly around you. Your personal attendants, the stable hands, the kitchen staff, the guards at your door, they aren't just there to serve you. They are extensions of the court's vast surveillance apparatus. Every meal you eat, every walk you take in the meticulously manicured gardens, perhaps reminiscent of the grand, formal designs seen at historic plantations in South Carolina, every visit you receive is observed. Imagine trying to have a genuinely private moment when someone is always just outside the door, or perhaps even inside the room, seemingly busy with a task but acutely aware of your every move. It's like being a contestant on a reality show that never ends, and the cameras are always rolling, even when you think they're not. You crave solitude, but it's a luxury you'll never truly experience here. And you just know that even your most innocent gestures are being scrutinized. The walls themselves, though adorned with beautiful tapestries and intricate carvings, feel like they have ears. Courtiers, often desperate to curry favor with the monarch, would eagerly report any perceived indiscretion or disloyal remark. A casual complaint about the food, a wistful sigh about your homeland, or even a nuanced political opinion shared with a seemingly friendly face could be immediately twisted and relayed to the highest authorities. The court cultivated an atmosphere of mutual suspicion, where everyone was potentially both an informant and a target. It's like being in a constant popularity contest where losing means severe punishment, and anyone can betray you to get ahead. You try to build connections, but a deep-seated fear prevents genuine intimacy. A fascinating yet rarely discussed detail about courtly surveillance is that monarchs often encouraged courtiers to engage in gossip and rumor-mongering, not just to gather information, but also to create an atmosphere of distrust and anxiety that prevented the formation of strong, unified factions against the crown. For hostages, This meant that even seemingly harmless social interactions could be fraught with danger, as a misreported word or an enemy's malicious interpretation could trigger an investigation. This means the very social fabric of the court was designed to keep everyone, including you, on edge, preventing any true sense of security or camaraderie. Historians still widely debate the psychological toll of constant, pervasive surveillance on political hostages, and whether the long-term effects of living without privacy led to profound paranoia, emotional numbing, or a complete suppression of personal identity, suggesting a deeply damaging environment for mental well-being. For you, the hostage. The palace felt less like a home and more like a panopticon, a circular prison where you could always be observed, but never truly knew who was watching. Consider the job of a modern-day intelligence analyst at the CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, who gathers information from various sources to build a comprehensive picture of foreign activities, often using sophisticated technology and meticulous cross-referencing. Their work is about objective data collection. Now, imagine your ancient counterpart, a royal spy master, whose technology involves human eyes and ears, whose data collection relies on gossip and fear, and whose analysis is often driven by political expediency and suspicion. His reports are whispered accusations, and his methods are far from scientific. It's like comparing a high-tech satellite surveillance system to a nosy neighbor with a keen ear and a grudge. You know you're being watched, but the methods are crude and terrifyingly personal. And you just know that his success depends on your failure. Your secrets become invaluable weapons, not just for you, but for those who might seek to use them. Any information you possess about your home kingdom, its military strengths, its political weaknesses, its economic vulnerabilities, even intimate details about your family's personal lives could be extracted, either through subtle manipulation or, if circumstances turned dire, more coercive means. The fear that a careless word could harm your loved ones back home is a powerful motivator for extreme self-control. It's like carrying a briefcase full of highly classified documents, knowing that if it falls into the wrong hands, it could start a war or destroy your family. You desperately want to unburden yourself, but the stakes are too high. The concept of loose-lipped sink ships was never more relevant than in a royal court. A seemingly innocent comment about your monarch's health, a casual observation about a general's strategy, or even a personal anecdote about a family member could be misinterpreted, exaggerated, or deliberately twisted into something incriminating. You learn to speak in platitudes, to offer vague answers, to avoid controversial topics. Your conversations become a sterile, carefully managed performance, devoid of genuine emotion or honesty. It's like trying to have a meaningful conversation through a complex series of code words and gestures, knowing that any direct statement could be a fatal error. You long for a moment of candid truth, but it's a luxury you cannot afford. The psychological impact of living under constant surveillance is immense. It breeds a deep-seated paranoia, a feeling that you are never truly alone, never truly safe. You begin to question everyone's motives, even those who seem genuinely kind. Sleep becomes restless, filled with anxieties about what you might have said or done. Your personality might shift, becoming more guarded, more cautious, more withdrawn. The constant pressure to be on, to maintain a flawless facade, is utterly exhausting, draining your spirit day by day. It's like perpetually walking on eggshells, knowing that any crack could lead to your total downfall. You yearn for peace of mind, but it's a phantom you can never catch. So, as you move through the opulent palace, the whispers of courtiers echoing in the grand halls, and the chilling awareness that every hidden chamber might conceal a listening ear, you feel the profound truth of whispers and walls, every secret a weapon. Your life is an open book. Your thoughts are never truly your own, and your deepest vulnerabilities are constantly exposed to those who would use them against you. In a royal court, the very act of seeking privacy and security truly sucked. You've learned the chilling reality of constant surveillance, where every whisper in the palace could become a weapon against you. and trust is a dangerous illusion. Now, as you reluctantly participate in the grand ceremonies and subtle intrigues of the royal court, you begin to grasp the cold, hard truth of your existence upon in play your life, their game. This isn't about your personal aspirations or even your immediate survival. It's about being a valuable yet disposable piece on a vast geopolitical chessboard, where your very existence is a tool for the powerful, and your fate is dictated by the unseen hands of kings and queens. It's like being a single chess piece on a board the size of Texas, being moved by giants whose motivations you can barely comprehend, and you just know that your capture or sacrifice is always a distinct possibility. A common historical truth is that political hostages were rarely, if ever, seen as individuals with agency or personal rights by their captors. Instead, they were considered strategic assets, living guarantees for treaties, alliances, or truces. Their well-being, their potential marriage into the host family, or even their death were all levers that powerful monarchs could pull to achieve their political objectives. Your personal comfort or misery was secondary to the grander diplomatic and military maneuvers playing out across the continent, making your entire existence transactional. You're not just a person, you're a valuable commodity, a living token in a high-stakes game. Imagine a situation where your home kingdom, perhaps nestled in the verdant valleys of Vermont, makes a strategic alliance with another minor power, perhaps a city-state on the coast of California. Suddenly, the powerful kingdom that holds you hostage sees this as a threat. The monarch of your host court, perhaps resembling a shrewd, calculating executive in a major New York City corporation, might subtly, or not so subtly, increase the restrictions on your freedom. Your lavish chambers might feel a little smaller, your attendance a little more watchful, your interactions with the outside world even more curtailed. This isn't because of anything you did personally, it's because your family's actions, miles away, directly impact your value and how you're treated. It's like watching a global stock market ticker, knowing that every fluctuating number directly impacts your personal worth and security. You are completely at the mercy of forces far beyond your control. And you just know that every shift in political winds blows directly at your fragile well-being. Your life in the palace, despite its outward appearances, is a constant demonstration of your host's power over your home kingdom. When ambassadors from your country visit, you might be paraded before them, dressed in the finest silks, looking well-fed and seemingly content. This is a deliberate show, a subtle message to your family that their precious hostage is well cared for, as long as they adhere to the terms of the treaty. But it's also a powerful reminder of who holds the reins. You are a silent, living boast, a trophy in the host monarch's collection. It's like being the centerpiece of a magnificent museum exhibit, admired by all but completely unable to leave your display case. You might look beautiful, but you're fundamentally trapped. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail about the use of political hostages is that their education and upbringing in the host court were often meticulously designed, not only to assimilate them culturally, but also to provide them with a deep understanding of the host kingdom's governance, military, and economy. This made them incredibly valuable assets, either as future loyal allies, or, if circumstances changed, as potential puppet rulers who understood the inner workings of the very kingdom they might one day be forced to govern, effectively turning them into tools for both peace and conquest. This means your daily lessons and observations were all part of a larger plan, preparing you for a role you might never have chosen, serving the interests of your captors. Historians still widely debate the psychological impact of this enforced education on political hostages, and whether they truly developed divided loyalties or merely feigned integration to survive, and how often this deep understanding of the host court was later leveraged by their home kingdoms for strategic advantage, suggesting a complex double-edged sword of influence and assimilation. For you, as you diligently study the host kingdom's history and politics, you feel the chilling truth that every piece of knowledge gained is another link in your golden chains. Consider the job of a modern-day professional athlete in a major league sports team in Los Angeles. California, whose performance directly impacts their team's success, and whose contract specifies their salary, playing time, and relative autonomy within the team structure. Their worth is largely tied to their individual skill. Now, imagine your ancient counterpart, a political hostage, whose performance is simply their continued existence, whose contract is a peace treaty signed by their family, and whose autonomy is utterly non-existent, entirely dependent on the strategic needs of two rival powers. His worth isn't about skill, it's about his bloodline. It's like comparing a star quarterback to a football that's just kicked around. You know you're valuable, but only as an object to be manipulated. And you just know your career ends the moment you're no longer useful. Your potential marriage is another example of being a pawn. Royal marriages were not about love or personal preference. They were about securing alliances, consolidating power, and creating heirs who would bind two families or two kingdoms together. As a hostage, you were a prime candidate for such a union. Imagine being told you are to marry into the royal family, perhaps to a prince or princess you barely know, a union arranged purely for political gain. This might sound like an elevation in status, but it is, in fact, another layer of your golden cage, further entangling you in the web of your captors, making your return home even more unlikely. It's like being forced into a business merger where you're the product being sold, not the CEO making the deal. You may gain a new title, but you lose even more of yourself. Even your very existence is a constant threat to your home kingdom. If your family were to betray the treaty, if they were to launch a surprise attack or form a new hostile alliance, your life would be the first thing on the chopping block. You are the ultimate deterrent, a living reminder of the consequences of defiance. This awareness, this constant knowledge that your life is forfeit if your family makes the wrong move, is a terrifying burden to carry. It's like being held at gunpoint, and the trigger is controlled by someone thousands of miles away. You hold your breath, hoping they never make a mistake. You are never truly safe, even in the most lavish settings. The political fortunes of your host kingdom also directly impact your well-being. If the monarch falls ill, if there's a succession crisis, or if a new faction rises to power, your position could become even more precarious. You might be seen as a liability, a symbol of the old regime, or even a rival claimant if your lineage is sufficiently royal. Every internal shift within the court sends ripples of fear through your gilded cage. You're a foreign body in a complex organism, and if the organism changes, it might decide to expel you, or worse, destroy you. You are constantly on edge, watching for signs of instability. So, as you go through your days, dining in grand halls and exchanging polite, meaningless conversation, the chilling truth of your predicament never truly leaves you. You feel the profound truth of being a pawn in play your life. Their game. Your existence is a mere instrument in the hands of the powerful. Your fate dictated by the grand, impersonal strategies of kings and courts. In a royal court, the very act of living as a political hostage truly sucked. You've come to understand the unsettling truth of your existence as a political hostage, a valuable yet disposable pawn on a vast chessboard, your life dictated by distant, powerful hands. Now, as you endure the endless days within the palace, the subtle psychological torment intensifies, as you realize that despite the comforts, your very life hangs by a thread, the looming threat, a slip, a fall, a death. This isn't about open violence, it's about the constant, unspoken danger of your situation, where any perceived transgression, any shift in political winds, or even a simple accident could lead to your swift and brutal demise, leaving you with an agonizing awareness of your absolute vulnerability. It's like living under a perpetually swinging pendulum, knowing that at any moment, like without warning, it could descend and crush you. And you just know that every cough or sniffle could be the start of your final illness. A common historical truth is that political hostages, despite their privileged outward appearance, lived under the constant threat of execution or deliberate harm. While their direct murder was often a last resort, used only in extreme diplomatic breakdowns, the possibility of accidental deaths poisonings, or sudden illnesses was a real danger, particularly if they became inconvenient, lost their political value, or if their home kingdom betrayed the terms of their agreement. Their safety was entirely conditional, and their lives were often precarious, depending on the whims and strategic needs of their captors. You're not just a guest, you're a prisoner on death row, and your execution date is entirely flexible, determined by factors completely outside your control. Imagine your home kingdom, perhaps nestled in the rugged mountains of Colorado, has just lost a crucial battle against the forces of your host country. News travels slowly, but eventually, the grim tidings reach the court. Suddenly, the smiles of the courtiers seem a little tighter, the deference of the servants a little less pronounced. The monarch, who once treated you with a degree of benevolent indifference, now casts piercing glances your way. You feel the temperature in the room drop, the air thicken with unspoken tension. This isn't about anything you've done. It's about your family's misfortune, which has drastically altered your value as a hostage. You are no longer just collateral. You are a potential liability, a symbol of a defeated enemy, and your existence might become an inconvenience. It's like watching your favorite sports team lose a championship game. And suddenly everyone around you, who moments ago were cheering, now looks at you with disdain, as if you were personally responsible for the loss. You can feel the weight of their judgment and the chilling realization that their disappointment could turn deadly. And you just know that a shift in their mood means a shift in your life expectancy. The simplest act can become fraught with peril. A new attendant brings you a cup of spiced wine, perhaps from a vineyard resembling the rolling hills of Napa Valley in California. It smells fragrant, inviting, but you hesitate. Could it be poison? In royal courts, poison was a subtle, untraceable weapon, a favored tool for removing inconvenient individuals without bloodshed or public scandal. You've heard whispers of rivals disappearing, of sudden, mysterious illnesses sweeping through specific households. You eye the cup, then the attendant's face, trying to discern any hint of malice. You might take a cautious sip, or perhaps discreetly leave it untouched, pretending to be unwell. This constant vigilance, this suspicion of even the most basic sustenance is utterly exhausting. It's like being offered a piece of delicious cake, but you know there's a 1 in 10 chance it's laced with a deadly toxin. You desperately want to trust, but the stakes are too high. You learn to live with a constant, gnawing anxiety, making every meal a potential game of Russian roulette. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail about the threat of poisoning for political hostages is that some historical accounts suggest that hostage keepers would sometimes intentionally allow minor illnesses to plague hostages, or even subtly underfeed them. Not to kill them, but to weaken them physically and mentally, making them more pliable, less likely to resist, and giving their home kingdom a constant, subtle reminder of their precarious health, thereby exerting psychological pressure. This means even your daily sustenance could be a calculated manipulation, a slow chipping away at your physical and mental fortitude, adding another layer to your misery. Historians still widely debate the true prevalence of assassination attempts or deliberate poisonings targeting political hostages in historical courts, versus the more common threats of neglect or the psychological pressures of captivity, and whether the pervasive fear of such acts was largely a product of courtly paranoia or a genuine reflection of the brutal realities of power, suggesting a chilling ambiguity surrounding their safety. For you, the hostage, the line between genuine illness and malevolent intent was always blurred, adding to the constant, low-level dread that shadowed your every moment. Consider the job of a modern-day food safety inspector in a bustling restaurant in New Orleans, Louisiana, meticulously checking for proper hygiene, storage, and preparation to ensure the food served is safe and free from contamination. Their work is about protecting public health. Now imagine your ancient counterpart, a royal taster, whose job is to risk their own life by taking the first bite of the monarch's food, and by extension yours, to test for poison. His safety inspection involves direct ingestion, and his quality control is a matter of life and death. It's like comparing a sterile laboratory to a medieval game of chance, where the stakes are incredibly high. You know someone is checking, but their method is terrifyingly primitive, and you just know you're still not truly safe. Even after they've taken the first bite, the looming threat isn't just poison. An accident could be arranged to fall from a high balcony, a misstep during a hunt, a sudden drowning in a palace lake, or in a fit of rage, or as a cold, calculated message to your defiant family. The monarch could simply order your direct execution. While rare, such acts sent shivers through the diplomatic world, serving as the ultimate warning. Your value as a living hostage evaporates, replaced by your symbolic value as a corpse, a stark testament to the consequences of betrayal. You are acutely aware that your life is a line in a ledger, and it can be erased at any time. It's like watching a tightrope walker, but the rope is frayed, and there's no safety net. You know the fall could come at any moment, and it would be fatal. This constant awareness of your absolute vulnerability, this knowledge that your life could end with a single command or a subtle, unseen act, is a profound psychological burden. You learn to read the subtle shifts in the monarch's mood, the whispers among the courtiers, the changing political tides, desperately seeking any sign that your life is in immediate peril. You become hypervigilant, analyzing every gesture, every silence, every change in your daily routine. This relentless scrutiny of your environment, this never-ending internal calculation of risk, is utterly exhausting. It's like living with a persistent, low-grade fever, constantly draining your energy and your spirit. You yearn for a moment of genuine security, but it's a phantom you can never grasp, even if direct harm doesn't come to you. The sheer stress of anticipation is a torment in itself. Every day could be your last. Every meal could be poisoned. Every seemingly friendly face could be plotting your demise. This uncertainty, this lack of control over your own survival, gnaws at your sanity, eroding your sense of safety and self-preservation. You are effectively living with a sword perpetually hanging over your head, and the thread holding it is fraying more with each passing moment. It's a constant, low-level hum of dread, a background noise to your otherwise opulent existence, reminding you of the profound misery of your existence. So, as you delicately sip your wine, or carefully navigate the palace stairs, the unseen threat of an accident or deliberate act of malice clinging to your every breath, you feel the profound truth of the looming threat: a slip, a fall, a death. Your life hangs by the thinnest of threads, dictated by the unpredictable whims of power and the brutal realities of political intrigue. In a royal court, the very act of trying to survive each day as a political hostage truly sucked. You've grappled with the insidious threats, the constant fear of a sudden accident or politically motivated execution that colors every moment of your gilded captivity. Now, as the endless days stretch into weeks, months, and even years, the true weight of your situation begins to settle in familiar faces. Foreign hearts, isolation's chill. This isn't about physical pain. It's about the profound, soul-crushing loneliness. The agonizing separation from everything you once knew. Your family, your homeland, your identity. Leaving you adrift in a world of polite strangers and feeling utterly, irrevocably alone. It's like being shipwrecked on a beautiful, uninhabited island, where your only companions are the echoes of a life you can no longer touch. And you just know that every passing day makes the memories of home a little fainter. A common historical truth is that one of the most devastating psychological consequences for political hostages was the profound sense of isolation and separation from their families and cultural heritage. While physically housed in luxury, they were often emotionally cut off, surrounded by people whose loyalties lay elsewhere, and with limited, often censored, contact with their loved ones. This enforced detachment could lead to deep loneliness, a loss of identity, and a profound yearning for the familiar, even if that familiar world was far less opulent than their current gilded cage. You're not just missing home, you're losing a piece of yourself, day by agonizing day, in a place where no one truly understands you. Imagine, for a moment, a child growing up in a close-knit family in a small town in rural Georgia, surrounded by the comforting familiarity of local traditions, accents, and shared history. Now, imagine that child plucked from that environment and placed in a grand, formal boarding school in a distant, unfamiliar country where everyone speaks a different language, follows different customs, and where their only connection to home is a heavily scrutinized letter once a month. This is a glimpse into your reality. Even if you were an adult when first taken, the experience is magnified. The faces around you in the court, though they might become familiar through daily interaction, remain foreign hearts. Their jokes, their customs, their superstitions, they are not yours. You laugh politely, you nod understandingly. But inside, you feel a profound disconnect. It's like being forced to live in a beautifully furnished room, but the air conditioning is always set to a temperature that leaves you shivering, no matter how many blankets you pile on. You crave warmth, but it's perpetually out of reach. And you just know that no matter how hard you try, you'll never truly belong here. The most agonizing aspect of this isolation is the separation from your family. You might receive occasional letters, meticulously penned by scribes and always read by the host court's officials before they reach your hands. These letters would be carefully worded, devoid of any genuine emotional outburst or sensitive political information. Your replies would face similar scrutiny. The yearning to see your parents, your siblings, perhaps even your own children becomes a constant, dull ache in your chest. You imagine their faces, try to recall the sound of their voices, the way your mother used to hum, or your father's hearty laugh. But with each passing year, these memories become a little blurrier, a little more distant, like faded photographs. It's like being able to look through a clear pane of glass at your loved ones, but you can't touch them, you can't speak to them, and they can't hear your cries. The proximity makes the distance even more painful. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed detail about the emotional plight of political hostages is that some monarchs would occasionally permit brief, supervised visits from family members, or even send the hostage home for short periods for significant family events like a sibling's wedding or a parent's funeral. While seemingly acts of kindness, these moments often serve to reinforce the host's power and the hostage's dependence, as the reunion would be fleeting, heavily controlled, and a stark reminder that their freedom, even temporarily, was entirely at the monarch's discretion. The emotional whiplash of these brief tastes of home could be profoundly destabilizing. This means even moments of joy were tinged with sadness, designed to remind you of your gilded prison, making the longing for true freedom even more intense. Historians still widely debate the long-term psychological effects of forced, prolonged separation from family and culture on political hostages, and whether such experiences contributed to a sense of unresolved trauma, difficulties in forming future attachments, or a permanent feeling of being between worlds, suggesting a deeply personal and often tragic dimension to their historical role. For you, the hostage, the passage of time wasn't just a march of days, it was a slow, agonizing erosion of your connection to everything that once defined you. Consider the job of a modern-day foreign service officer serving in a remote embassy, perhaps in a distant land, who experiences cultural differences and temporary separation from family, but has regular access to communication, leave, and eventually, a return home to their own culture and familiar comforts. Their experience, while challenging, is temporary and voluntary. Now, imagine your ancient counterpart, a political hostage, whose remote embassy is a gilded cage, whose cultural differences are a permanent barrier to true belonging, and whose return home is a faint, often unrealized dream, entirely dependent on the fluctuating will of a foreign power. His communication is censored, and his leave is non-existent. It's like comparing a temporary overseas assignment to a life sentence in a foreign country. You understand the purpose of your presence, but the personal cost is immeasurable. And you just know that holidays spent alone are the hardest. The cultural chasm often felt vast and unbridgeable. The food, the music, the religious practices, the social etiquette, all were subtly or overtly different from what you knew. While you might learn to adapt, to mimic the customs, to speak the language fluently, you rarely felt truly comfortable. You were constantly aware of being an outsider, an anomaly in their world. This meant you couldn't fully express yourself, couldn't share your deepest thoughts or feelings with anyone who truly understood your background. It's like speaking a perfect second language, but still dreaming in your mother tongue. You can communicate, but you can't truly connect. You long for the familiar comfort of your own traditions, but they are miles away, inaccessible. Even the luxurious environment contributed to your isolation. Surrounded by servants and courtiers, you were constantly observed, but rarely truly engaged with on a personal level. Your status as a hostage created an invisible barrier, preventing genuine friendships from forming. Those who might seem friendly are often just performing their duty, or subtly attempting to gather information, as you remember from The Smiling Viper. This lack of true companionship, the inability to forge bonds based on genuine trust and shared experiences, breeds a profound loneliness that even the grandest feasts and most lavish entertainment cannot fill. It's like attending a huge party where you know no one, and everyone is secretly judging you. You're surrounded by people, but utterly, devastatingly alone. The loss of your personal identity is another chilling aspect. Away from your own family and culture, constantly adapting to the expectations of your captors, you might begin to lose a sense of who you truly are, the traditions you cherished, the values instilled in you, the very language of your heart. They start to feel distant. Replaced by the imposed identity of a guest or a pawn, you become a reflection of what the court wants you to be, losing touch with your authentic self. It's like looking into a funhouse mirror every day. And slowly, your own reflection starts to twist and distort until you barely recognize yourself. You yearn to feel like yourself again, but that self feels increasingly out of reach. So, as you walk the lonely halls of the opulent palace, the polite smiles of courtiers feeling like cold masks, and the memories of your family fading like distant echoes, you feel the profound truth of familiar faces. Foreign hearts, isolation's chill. Your gilded captivity is a cage of profound loneliness, severing you from everything that once defined you, leaving you adrift in a world where you can never truly belong. In a royal court, the very act of enduring such soul-crushing isolation truly sucked. You felt the crushing weight of isolation, the profound loneliness of being severed from your family and culture, trapped within the gilded cage of a foreign court. Now, as the initial hope of a swift return fades with each passing day, you begin to confront the soul-crushing reality of your predicament, the empty promise freedom's fading hope. This isn't about outright betrayal, it's about the psychological torment of indefinite detention. The repeated, subtle reassurances that never materialize, and the slow, agonizing erosion of any belief that you will ever truly regain your liberty. It's like being promised a prize that's always just out of reach, no matter how far you stretch, until your arms ache and your spirit breaks. And you just know that every kind word about your imminent release is a hollow lie. A common historical truth is that political hostages often faced prolonged periods of captivity, far exceeding initial expectations set by treaties or diplomatic agreements. While direct formal declarations of indefinite detention were rare, monarchs frequently employed vague promises of future release, contingent upon various political conditions or the good behavior of the hostage's home kingdom. This created a state of perpetual uncertainty, leading to deep psychological distress, as the hostage lived in a constant cycle of hope and crushing disappointment, with their freedom always seemingly just around the corner, yet never truly arriving. You're not just waiting, you're caught in a psychological limbo, where hope itself becomes a form of torture. Imagine you were a young political hostage, perhaps still a teenager when you arrived, taken from a thriving port city like Charleston, South Carolina, and placed in the grand, intimidating court of a rival power. Initially, your family's envoys, or perhaps the monarch's own diplomats, offered comforting words. Just a few months, they might have said, until the treaty is fully ratified, or a year at most, until stability is assured. You clung to these words, marking the days, imagining your triumphant return. Perhaps you even packed a small bag, ready for the journey home. But then the months turn into a year, the year into two. The initial specific dates become vague assurances, then non-committal gestures. Soon, they might say with a polite smile, when the political climate is right, or we are working diligently on your release. The words are always kind, always reassuring, but they lack substance, like grasping at smoke. It's like being told your delayed flight will definitely leave in an hour, and then another, until you realize you're stranded indefinitely with no clear end in sight. You desperately crave a concrete answer, but you're only given polite evasions, and you just know that soon means never. The monarch of your host kingdom, perhaps a cunning strategist like a CEO of a modern tech giant in Silicon Valley, understands the power of this psychological manipulation by keeping you in a state of suspended animation, always hinting at release but never quite granting it. They maintain maximum leverage over your home kingdom. Your continued presence is a constant pressure point, a living reminder of their dominance. If your family pushes too hard on a diplomatic issue, your release might be subtly delayed. If they show signs of defiance, the promises become even vaguer. Your hope is a leash, constantly tugged and slackened to control the actions of others. It's like being trained with a treat that's always dangled just beyond your reach, forever motivating you to comply but never truly satisfying your hunger. You are a tool, and your aspirations are merely part of their control mechanism. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail about the empty promises given to political hostages is that their keepers would sometimes deliberately foster friendships or even romantic relationships for the hostage within the court, subtly creating new ties that would make the concept of returning home less appealing, or at least more complicated, thereby further binding them psychologically to their captivity. The promise of future integration, including marriage or a permanent role in the host court, could be a powerful, if manipulative, counter-incentive to desiring true freedom. This means even the possibility of human connection could be weaponized, twisting your desires and making the path to genuine liberty even more emotionally fraught. Historians still widely debate the extent to which political hostages genuinely believe the promises of their eventual release, versus becoming deeply cynical about their prospects, and how often this prolonged uncertainty led to mental health crises, including severe depression, anxiety, or a complete loss of purpose, suggesting a profound and often underappreciated dimension of their suffering. For you, the hostage, every sunrise brought a fresh wave of hope, quickly followed by the crushing realization that another day in your gilded cage had begun, making the very concept of freedom feel like a cruel mirage. Consider the job of a modern-day immigration lawyer in New York City, who meticulously works to secure visas and green cards for clients, providing clear timelines, legal avenues, and realistic expectations for achieving permanent residency or citizenship. Their work is about navigating complex legal pathways to achieve freedom of movement. Now, imagine your ancient counterpart, a royal advisor, whose legal advice to you is a series of vague, politically expedient assurances, whose timeline is completely fluid, and whose path to freedom is entirely dependent on the shifting whims of a monarch and the unpredictable tides of international relations. His strategy involves keeping you perpetually hopeful, but never truly free. It's like comparing a professional guide with a detailed map to a blindfolded wanderer being led by whispers. You know he's talking about your future, but his words offer no real clarity, and you just know that he's deliberately keeping you in the dark. The fading hope is a gradual, insidious process. It doesn't happen overnight. Instead, it's a slow erosion, like water wearing away stone. Each unfulfilled promise, each missed opportunity for return, chips away at your belief. You might see other individuals from rival kingdoms arrive as hostages, or even depart for home while you remain. Their freedom highlights your continued captivity, intensifying your despair. You begin to question everything: your family's commitment, the honesty of the host monarch, even your own sanity for continuing to believe. It's like watching a candle slowly burn down, its flame getting smaller and smaller until finally it flickers out, leaving you in complete darkness. The light of hope, once bright, now barely glows. The psychological torment of indefinite detention is arguably more cruel than overt physical punishment. At least with physical pain, there is an end, a defined boundary. With indefinite detention, there is no end in sight. You live in a constant state of suspension, unable to plan for the future, unable to move forward, forever stuck in the present. This uncertainty breeds deep anxiety, a sense of helplessness, and can lead to depression. Your spirit, once resilient, begins to fray under the relentless pressure of unfulfilled expectations. You try to envision a future, but every pathway seems blocked, every door closed. It's like being trapped in a labyrinth with no exit, simply walking in circles, losing your sense of direction and purpose. You crave closure, any kind of resolution, but it's brutally denied. Even if your eventual release is granted, the years of waiting, the psychological scars of manipulated hope, would leave an indelible mark. You would return to a world that has moved on without you, a family that has aged, perhaps even children who grew up without your presence. The freedom you finally achieve might feel less like liberation and more like an anticlimax, overshadowed by the lost years and the profound sense of what might have been. The empty promise isn't just about the words. It's about the life that slipped away during your long, agonizing wait. So, as you listen to another polite assurance of your eventual return, the words echoing hollowly in the grand, indifferent halls, you feel the profound truth of the empty promise freedom's fading hope. Your existence is a limbo of unfulfilled expectations, a slow erosion of spirit under the weight of indefinite captivity. In a royal court, the very act of desperately clinging to the hope of freedom truly sucked. You felt the crushing weight of dashed hopes, the psychological torment of indefinite detention, where freedom remains a cruel, fading mirage. Now, as the initial shock and the desperate clinging to external hopes slowly recede, you are left with the profound, internal struggle mind-forged manacles despair's subtle chains. This isn't about physical restraints, it's about the insidious erosion of your spirit, the slow decay of your sense of self-worth and purpose. As the endless monotony and profound helplessness begin to forge invisible chains around your mind, binding you in a torment far deeper than any iron shackle. It's like being trapped in a beautiful, silent room, and slowly, imperceptibly, the walls begin to close in on your very soul, and you just know that the heaviest chains are the ones you can't see. A common historical truth is that the psychological toll of prolonged, involuntary captivity, especially for political hostages living in a state of suspended animation, often manifested as severe mental and emotional distress. This could include chronic depression, acute anxiety, a pervasive sense of hopelessness, and a profound erosion of personal identity and self-worth. Stripped of agency, purpose, and genuine connection, the hostage's spirit could become imprisoned long before their physical body was ever freed, leading to a deep and insidious form of despair that permeated every aspect of their existence. You're not just physically confined, your mind is becoming a prison, and your own thoughts are the bars. Imagine a bright, energetic young person, Perhaps like a promising college athlete from a vibrant campus in Austin, Texas, full of ambition and a clear vision for their future. Now, imagine that person confined to a gilded cage, day after day, week after week, with no meaningful tasks, no true purpose, and no control over their destiny. The initial defiance, the desperate planning for escape, the ardent belief in a swift return, these fade, replaced by a dull, persistent ache of hopelessness. What is the point of dreaming when all dreams are crushed? What is the point of planning when you have no future to plan for the lavish surroundings? Once a source of wonder, now mock your lack of freedom, turning into symbols of your perpetual gilded misery. It's like being given an unlimited supply of your favorite food, but you're locked in a room and told you can never leave. Slowly losing your appetite as the days blur into a meaningless cycle. You crave meaning, but it's utterly denied, and you just know that even the most vibrant colors in the tapestries begin to look gray. The subtle chains of despair are forged in the relentless monotony of your existence. Your days are largely the same formal lessons, polite conversations, lavish meals, perhaps a supervised walk in the gardens. There is little intellectual stimulation that genuinely engages your mind, no challenging tasks that provide a sense of accomplishment, no personal projects that offer a spark of joy. This lack of purpose slowly saps your will, turning ambition into apathy. You might try to engage in hobbies, like reading or playing a musical instrument, but even these pursuits feel empty, knowing they are merely distractions from your fundamental powerlessness. It's like being given a beautiful, intricate puzzle, but you know a crucial piece is missing, and you're forbidden from ever looking for it. You can't complete the picture, and the effort feels pointless. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed detail about the psychological impact of hostage situations in royal courts is that some long-term hostages, particularly those taken as children, could develop a profound form of Stockholm syndrome, where they began to identify with their captors and even internalize the court's values and perspectives, sometimes leading to a loss of memory or emotional connection to their original family and homeland. A disturbing manifestation of despair's subtle chains. This means the psychological warfare could be so effective that it altered your very sense of self, making the desire for escape less about liberty and more about confronting a fractured identity. Historians still widely debate the extent to which political hostages were able to maintain their cultural and personal identities despite prolonged assimilation efforts and psychological pressures, and whether the documented cases of deep despair and loss of self were universal experiences or varied greatly depending on individual resilience and the specific circumstances of their captivity, suggesting a complex interplay between environment and inner strength. For you, the hostage, the struggle was not just against external forces, but against the insidious erosion of your own mind, fighting to remember who you truly were before the golden cage began its work. Consider the job of a modern-day psychologist specializing in trauma and long-term confinement, perhaps working with former prisoners of war in a quiet clinic in Boulder, Colorado. Their work involves helping individuals regain a sense of purpose, process their experiences, and rebuild their identity, using therapies designed to address profound psychological distress. Now, imagine your ancient counterpart, a royal courtier, whose solution to your despair is often more entertainment, stricter surveillance, or perhaps a subtle reminder of your family's failures. His therapy is often about control, not healing, and his understanding of your mental state is limited to its impact on your compliance. It's like comparing a compassionate therapist to a jailer who just wants you to stop complaining. You know he's observing your misery, but his methods offer no true comfort or path to recovery. And you just know he probably attributes your sadness to some foreign melancholia. The erosion of self-worth is another cruel consequence. You are constantly reminded that you are a pawn, a tool, a means to an end. Your opinions are rarely sought, your desires are irrelevant, and your personal achievements might, however small, go unacknowledged by those who truly hold power. This constant negation of your individual importance slowly chips away at your confidence and self-respect. You begin to question your own value, seeing yourself through the eyes of your captors as merely a resource to be managed. It's like being a talented artist, but you're only allowed to paint the same dull wall over and over until you forget what creativity even feels like. You long to feel valued, but the court reminds you daily of your utter dispensability. The profound helplessness becomes a suffocating blanket. You have no control over your location, your activities, your fate. Every decision, from the grand political maneuvers that dictate your long-term security to the simple choice of what to eat for dinner, is made by someone else. This lack of agency is incredibly damaging, fostering a sense of utter powerlessness. You might try to exert control in small ways, perhaps by refusing a certain dish, or by silently defying a minor instruction, but these acts feel futile, merely scratching the surface of your pervasive captivity. It's like being a ship adrift in a vast ocean, with no sails, no rudder, and no hope of reaching shore. You are simply carried wherever the currents take you. You crave control, but it's brutally denied. This internal struggle, the fight against the mind-forged manacles, is often more insidious than any physical pain. Physical wounds heal, but the scars on the spirit can linger for a lifetime. You might find yourself staring blankly at the ornate tapestries, your mind adrift, disconnected from your own thoughts and emotions. Sleep might offer little respite, haunted by dreams of escape that end in disillusionment or nightmares of your family's suffering. The palace, once a symbol of opulence, becomes a tangible representation of your internal decay, each gilded surface reflecting your growing despair. So, as you sit in your lavish chambers, the silence of the night broken only by the distant sounds of the palace, you feel the profound weight of mind-forged manacles despair's subtle chains. Your spirit, once vibrant, is slowly being bound by the relentless hopelessness and the agonizing loss of purpose, leaving you trapped in a torment far deeper than any physical prison. In a royal court, the very act of enduring such profound despair truly sucked. You've descended into the dark abyss of despair, feeling the invisible chains of psychological torment slowly forging around your spirit, making the lavish palace a prison for your very mind. Now, facing this profound internal struggle and the relentless pressure of your gilded cage, you must find a way to cope, to endure, to merely survive lessons in survival adapting to the abyss. This isn't about grand escapes. It's about the desperate, often subtle strategies adopted by political hostages to maintain a semblance of sanity, to find fleeting moments of control, and to navigate a life of enforced dependency without utterly breaking. It's like learning to breathe underwater, not to swim to the surface, but simply to exist in the crushing depths. And you just know that every small victory against the despair feels monumental. A common historical truth is that political hostages, despite their lack of overt power, often developed sophisticated coping mechanisms and strategies to survive their prolonged captivity. These could range from cultivating relationships with sympathetic courtiers, meticulously studying the host culture and language, feigning compliance while secretly maintaining inner defiance, or finding solace in intellectual pursuits. Survival was not merely about physical endurance, it was a psychological battle to preserve one's identity, sanity, and hope against overwhelming odds, often requiring immense adaptability and cunning. You're not just passively existing, you're actively, subtly, fighting for your soul. One small act of defiance or adaptation at a time. Imagine yourself as a young noble from a proud, independent kingdom, perhaps akin to the fierce mountain communities of Appalachia, now confined to the elaborate, stifling court of a powerful empire. The initial shock, the fear, the isolation, and the despair have all taken their toll. But deep within you, a flicker of defiance remains, a primal instinct to survive. You begin to observe, to learn, to adapt. One of your first lessons in survival is the art of observation. You watch the courtiers, learning their rivalries, their alliances, their unspoken rules. You listen to the whispers, discerning the true meaning behind polite formalities. You study the monarch's moods, learning when to speak and when to remain silent, when to be visible and when to fade into the background. This is not just curiosity, it's a vital skill. Like a seasoned poker player analyzing every opponent's tell, you're gathering intelligence not for your home kingdom, but for your own personal safety. It's like living in a constant, high-stakes psychological thriller, where your ability to read the room determines whether you live or die. You become a master of subtle cues, a silent observer of human nature, and you just know that every seemingly insignificant detail could be crucial. Another critical strategy is intellectual engagement. With ample free time and access to the palace's libraries, which might be vast and impressive, akin to the historical libraries of Boston or Philadelphia, you could immerse yourself in books, history, philosophy, literature, foreign languages. These pursuits offer an escape, a way to keep your mind sharp and engaged, preventing the insidious dullness of despair from fully consuming you. Learning the host kingdom's language fluently isn't just about communication. It's about understanding their culture on a deeper level, allowing you to anticipate their actions, even to subtly influence them. It's like being given a complex puzzle, and solving it offers a fleeting moment of mental freedom. A reminder that your mind, at least, remains your own. You crave knowledge, not just for its own sake, but as a lifeline to sanity. A fascinating yet rarely discussed detail about the coping mechanisms of political hostages is that some learn to become exceptionally skilled at courtly games, like chess, or at mastering musical instruments, or even at developing profound artistic talents. These activities not only provided a mental escape, but also offered a rare form of status and respect within the court, sometimes even earning them favor from the monarch or influential courtiers, creating small pockets of influence and personal validation in an otherwise powerless existence. This means your ability to play a perfect game of chess could, paradoxically, offer a strange form of psychological power, a subtle way to demonstrate your intellect and maintain a sense of worth. Historians still widely debate the extent to which these coping mechanisms truly alleviated the long-term psychological damage of captivity, versus merely allowing hostages to endure an intolerable situation, and whether such adaptations sometimes blurred the line between survival and genuine assimilation, making their eventual return home, if it occurred, even more psychologically complex. For you, the hostage, every small achievement, every moment of mental clarity was a victory against the abyss, a desperate attempt to keep your inner light from extinguishing entirely. Consider the job of a modern-day research scientist in a quiet university lab in Seattle. Washington, whose work involves deep intellectual focus, problem-solving, and a pursuit of knowledge for its own sake, often finding solace and purpose in their studies. Their environment is designed for intellectual freedom. Now imagine your ancient counterpart, a political hostage whose research is simply about understanding their gilded prison, whose problem-solving is about daily survival, and whose pursuit of knowledge is a desperate attempt to maintain sanity and identity in a world that seeks to erase both. His lab is a palace, and his freedom is entirely internal. It's like comparing a voluntary academic pursuit to a mandatory intellectual exercise for survival. You know you're learning, but the stakes are terrifyingly personal. And you just know that every book you read is a silent act of rebellion. Another survival strategy is feigned compliance. You learn to perform the role of the agreeable guest, to smile at the right times, to offer polite gratitude, even when your heart aches for defiance. You avoid overt challenges to the monarch's authority, keeping your true feelings hidden behind a carefully constructed facade. This isn't cowardice, it's cunning. By appearing harmless and cooperative, you reduce the immediate threats to your life and subtly gain a degree of limited trust. which might afford you small privileges or minor relaxations of surveillance. It's like being an actor in a play where your life is the ticket price, and your performance must be flawless. Even if you despise the script, you learn to project an image that is completely at odds with your inner turmoil. Cultivating sympathetic relationships with certain courtiers or servants is another delicate dance. You might find a kind-hearted tutor, a compassionate attendant, or even a disillusioned noble who subtly offers small favors, provides uncensored information, or offers a genuine, fleeting moment of human connection. These relationships are risky, as they could be reported and used against you or the individual offering aid. But the desperate need for connection, for a moment of genuine empathy in a sea of foreign hearts, often outweighs the danger. These small acts of kindness, however rare, become life rafts in your ocean of loneliness. It's like finding a single, fresh spring in the middle of a vast, unforgiving desert. You drink deeply, knowing it might not last. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, is the internal battle to maintain your sense of self. Despite the constant pressure to assimilate, to forget your roots, you cling to memories of your homeland, your family's traditions, the values instilled in you since childhood. You might privately recite old poems, sing forgotten songs, or mentally replay cherished moments. This internal sanctuary, this mental fortress, becomes your true home, a place where the host court cannot reach you, where your identity remains defiantly intact. It's like building a secret garden in your mind, filled with the scents and sounds of home, a place only you can enter. This internal resilience, this quiet refusal to be entirely broken, is the ultimate act of survival. So, as you delicately navigate the treacherous waters of the royal court, your mind a fortress of hidden memories and your outward demeanor a mask of polite compliance. You feel the profound truth of lessons in survival adapting to the abyss. Your life is a constant, subtle battle to preserve your sanity and identity against overwhelming odds, transforming every small act of defiance and every moment of intellectual solace into a desperate victory. In a royal court, the very act of enduring and maintaining your spirit truly sucked. You've explored the depths of a political hostage's misery, from the deceptive luxury of a gilded cage to the soul-crushing weight of despair and the subtle art of psychological survival. Now, as our journey through this specific historical sorrow draws to a close, we step back from the individual experience to see the broader tapestry of history, shadows on the throne hostage's haunting legacy. This isn't about specific individuals anymore. It's about how the pervasive, brutal practice of hostage-taking and the suffering it entailed profoundly shaped the course of nations, influenced royal power dynamics, and left an indelible mark on the very concept of international relations, reminding us that even the darkest chapters of human history contain lessons for the present. It's like looking at the long, stretching shadows cast by ancient monuments, and realizing those shadows still touch the modern world, influencing how we think about power and vulnerability. And you just know that the echoes of their suffering still resonate in the halls of power today. A common historical truth is that the practice of taking and holding political hostages, while cruel, was a deeply embedded and pragmatic aspect of diplomacy and statecraft for millennia, particularly in periods before strong international law or robust institutional mechanisms for enforcing treaties. The lives of these individuals were considered expendable tools to ensure compliance, consolidate power, or prevent conflict, reflecting a stark and often brutal understanding of political leverage. This widespread practice left a complex legacy, influencing dynastic marriages, shaping cultural exchanges, and ultimately contributing to the gradual development of more formalized, albeit imperfect, diplomatic protocols over centuries. You're not just seeing individual suffering, you're witnessing a foundational element of ancient and medieval international relations, a dark art that played a crucial role in shaping the geopolitical landscape. Consider the vast sweep of history, from the ancient empires of Rome, whose vastness once stretched across the Mediterranean like a sprawling modern-day highway system connecting states from New York to California, to the intricate royal courts of medieval Europe and the powerful dynasties of Asia. In countless instances, the fragile peace between warring factions or rival kingdoms hinged on the presence of a royal hostage. Imagine a young prince or princess, torn from their family in a kingdom reminiscent of the rolling farmlands of Nebraska, now living under the watchful eye of a monarch in a bustling, formidable capital like London or Paris. Their very existence was a constant, unspoken threat, a reminder to their home kingdom of the dire consequences of breaking a treaty. This created a peculiar form of stability through terror, where potential conflict was held at bay by the vulnerability of a single, often innocent, individual. It's like having a loaded gun on the negotiating table, and the bullet is a human being. The tension might keep the peace, but the underlying cruelty is undeniable. And you just know that every diplomatic handshake was underscored by this silent threat. The haunting legacy of these hostages often manifested in subtle, yet profound ways. Dynastic marriages, for instance, were a primary means by which former hostages or their descendants became integrated into the ruling families of their captors. This could lead to complex interdynastic relationships, blurring the lines of national identity and creating new claims to thrones across different kingdoms. A child sent as a hostage might eventually marry into the royal family, and their offspring could one day rule both kingdoms, effectively uniting them, perhaps like a corporate merger between two massive tech companies that reshapes an entire industry. The initial act of captivity, meant to guarantee a treaty, could unexpectedly lead to a complete reshaping of political geography. It's a bizarre twist of fate, turning an instrument of submission into a conduit for lasting power, a fascinating yet rarely discussed detail about the long-term legacy of political hostages is that some former hostages, upon their eventual return or rise to power, became either staunch advocates for peace and closer ties with their former captors due to deep cultural assimilation, or even genuine affection formed during captivity. Or, conversely, became fiercely vengeful and dedicated their reigns to undermining or conquering the very kingdom that had once held them. This created an unpredictable and highly personal variable in international relations, where the individual experiences of a few could profoundly shape the destiny of many. This means the lessons learned in the Gilded Cage could produce wildly different outcomes, making the future of entire nations dependent on the psychological journey of a single, captive individual. Historians still widely debate the extent to which the psychological scars of a hostage experience influence the long-term policies and personalities of those who later ascended to positions of power, and whether the trauma of their youth contributed to patterns of paranoia, cruelty, or, conversely, a unique empathy for the vulnerable, suggesting a complex interplay between personal suffering and historical leadership. For you, the observer, the shadows on the throne are not just historical figures. They are echoes of lives lived under immense pressure, their past shaping the very fabric of power. Consider the job of a modern-day international relations scholar at a prestigious university in Washington, D.C., who analyzes diplomatic strategies, power balances, and the evolution of international law, always seeking to understand how nations interact and maintain peace. Their work is about understanding the grand, impersonal forces that shape global politics. Now, imagine your ancient counterpart, a court advisor, who understands that the balance of power often hinges on the lives of captive children, and whose diplomatic protocols include implicit threats against innocent lives. His international relations involve human pawns, and his peacekeeping relies on perpetual fear. It's like comparing a sterile academic debate on international policy to a real-life game of Russian roulette, where the lives of real people are on the line. You know the theories are complex, but the reality was brutally simple. And you just know that he probably saw human lives as mere numbers on a ledger. The cultural exchange facilitated by hostages also left its mark. Children raised in foreign courts often absorbed the language, customs, and knowledge of their captors, becoming conduits for new ideas and influences. When they eventually returned home, or when their descendants inherited power, they brought with them a unique perspective, sometimes introducing new technologies, artistic styles, or administrative practices learned abroad. This involuntary cultural diffusion, born out of captivity, inadvertently enriched both societies, even if the initial exchange was born from coercion. It's like a forced migration of seeds, carried by the winds of conflict, eventually leading to new, unexpected blooms in distant lands. The suffering of one could lead to the enrichment of many. However, the haunting legacy also includes a darker truth. The very existence of hostage-taking as a diplomatic tool underscores a fundamental brutality in early statecraft. It reveals a world where human rights were non-existent, where individuals were merely instruments of power, and where the most vulnerable members of society, often children, were sacrificed for political gain. This grim reality, slowly supplanted by the development of more formalized diplomacy and international law over centuries, serves as a powerful historical cautionary tale. It reminds us how fragile liberty can be, and how easily power can corrupt, leading to the dehumanization of individuals for the sake of the state. It's like finding a chilling ancient warning inscribed on a forgotten monument, urging future generations to never repeat the mistakes of the past. You see the warning, clear and undeniable. The echoes of these miserable existences continue to resonate in modern discussions about human rights, the treatment of prisoners, and the ethics of international relations. We look back at these practices with a sense of relief, grateful for the evolution of legal and moral frameworks that, however imperfectly, seek to protect individual lives from becoming mere bargaining chips. The suffering of these forgotten hostages help to illuminate the path towards a more humane and just world, reminding us of the immense value of every single human life. So, as the ancient shadows on the throne finally recede, and the echoes of their long-ago suffering fade into the quiet night, reflect on the profound truth of hostages' haunting legacy, their miserable existence, a testament to the brutal realities of power and diplomacy, shaped nations and left an indelible mark on history, reminding us how far humanity has come in its quest for justice, and how diligently we must work to protect the freedoms so often denied in a world where human lives were merely pawns in a king's game. The very act of living as a political hostage truly sucked, but their suffering helped pave the way for a more just future.